There once lived a man and a woman, kind-hearted and hard-working, who had always wished for a child, but could not have one. The couple resided in a small cottage on the edge of a forest. Their little house had a small window at the back, which overlooked a splendid garden. The garden, bathed in sunlight, bloomed with a vibrant array of flowers and herbs, filling the air with sweet fragrances. This garden was enclosed by a high, imposing wall, covered with thick vines and climbing ivy. No one dared to venture into it, for the garden belonged to a witch, a woman of great power, who was feared by all the villagers. One crisp autumn afternoon, the woman stood by the window, gazing longingly at the garden below. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, but what caught her eye was a small bed of Rapunzel, a rare herb with lush, green leaves and roots like radishes. Her desire grew stronger with each passing day. She could not understand why, but the more she looked at the Rapunzel, the more she craved it. It became an obsession, and as her yearning deepened, so did her sorrow. Her cheeks grew pale, and a faint sadness clouded her once bright eyes. She could not shake the desire, and it began to consume her thoughts. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the window, the man noticed his wife's melancholy. He sat beside her, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is wrong, my dear?" he asked gently, his voice filled with worry. She looked up at him, her eyes brimming with helplessness. "Ah," she sighed, "if I cannot eat some of the Rapunzel from the garden behind our house, I think I shall die. I have never craved anything more in my life. I can no longer bear it." The man, deeply in love with her and eager to see her well, thought long and hard. He knew of the witch's fearsome reputation, but love had clouded his judgment. "Sooner than let my lovely wife die," he whispered to himself, "I will bring her some of the Rapunzel myself, no matter what the cost. I will do anything to save her." That very night, when the sky had darkened and the village was quiet, the man decided to venture out. He pulled his cloak around him and set off toward the witch's garden. His heart pounded with fear, but his love for his wife gave him courage. As he approached the high wall that encircled the garden, the moonlight illuminated the vines and flowers that crept up the stone. He hesitated for only a moment before scrambling up the wall with all his might. With a quiet thud, he landed softly inside the garden. He hurried to the bed of Rapunzel and began to gather the tender leaves, careful not to disturb the rest of the garden. The herbs seemed to almost glow under the moon's light, as if it were meant for him to take. With his arms full of the precious Rapunzel, he climbed back over the wall and hurried home. His wife, pale and weak from longing, was overjoyed when he presented the herbs to her. She immediately set to work making a salad with the Rapunzel, savoring every bite. As she ate, color returned to her cheeks, and a satisfied smile spread across her face. But the next morning, when the woman awoke, the desire for the Rapunzel had returned, stronger than ever. It was as though the herb had worked its magic on her, and now she felt an even greater hunger for it. She could think of nothing else. Her thoughts were filled with images of the lush garden, and she longed to taste the Rapunzel again. "Please, my love," she said to her husband, her voice tinged with desperation. "I need more. I cannot live without it." The man looked at his wife, torn. He knew the danger, but he could not bear to see her so unhappy. "I will fetch more," he promised. "Wait here, and I will return with what you need." Once more, he ventured into the night, scaling the wall and making his way into the witch's garden. He froze in terror as he saw a shadow move across the garden. His blood ran cold. It was the witch. Before he could react, the witch appeared before him, her eyes burning with fury. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice like a venomous snake. "Sneak into my garden and steal my Rapunzel like a thief. You shall pay for this transgression." The man trembled. his knees weak with fear. "Please, have mercy," he begged. "My wife has seen the Rapunzel from our window, and she has longed for it so much that she would have died without it. I could not bear to see her suffer." The witch studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, her anger seemed to soften, and she spoke, her voice cold but measured. "If this is true, I will allow you to take as much as you desire, but in exchange, you must promise me one thing. When your wife gives birth to a child, you must give that child to me. I will raise it as my own, and it will be cared for." The man, desperate and afraid, agreed without thinking. "Yes, I promise. Take whatever you want, just let my wife live." And so, when the baby girl was born, the witch appeared immediately. She named the child Rapunzel and took her away, leaving the parents heartbroken and alone. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child beneath the sun. Her golden hair shimmered like sunlight. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her spirit was full of wonder. As the years passed, she blossomed into a young woman of rare beauty, with a kindness and innocence that made her loved by all who met her. The days stretched long and endless, and Rapunzel would often gaze longingly out the tiny window, wondering what the world beyond the tower looked like. When Rapunzel turned 12, the witch's cruelty reached new heights. The tower, once a place of solitude and safety, became a prison. The witch had no intention of allowing Rapunzel to experience the world beyond her grasp. She shut her away in a tower deep within the forest, where no one could find her. The tower was tall, with smooth, unscalable walls, and no stairs or doors. Only a small window, high above, allowed Rapunzel to see the sky. Each day, Rapunzel's world was confined to the narrow space of the tower. In the quiet of her loneliness, Rapunzel often sang to herself. Her voice, clear and sweet, drifted through the trees, a song of longing for the world she could never know. But the witch, with her sharp eyes and magic, always kept her close. Whenever she needed to visit Rapunzel, she would stand beneath the little window, her voice dripping with authority and power, and cry out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel, always obedient, would wind her magnificent hair, long and fine as spun gold, around the hook in the window. With practiced ease, she would lower the long tresses down the side of the tower. The witch, with her crooked fingers, would climb up, using Rapunzel's hair as a ladder, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Days turned into months, and months into years. Rapunzel grew more beautiful with each passing day, but she remained trapped in her tower, her only solace the songs she sang and the wind that whispered through the trees. But then, one fateful day, something changed. It was a crisp spring morning, when a prince, out on a hunt, happened to pass through the forest. He was a young man, strong and kind, with a heart full of adventure. His horse trotted through the forest, the sun filtering through the trees above him, when a sweet melody reached his ears. The song was so beautiful, so haunting, that it stopped him in his tracks. The voice was pure and filled with emotion, a voice that seemed to call out to him from deep within the woods. Intrigued and moved by the music, the prince dismounted from his horse and followed the sound, walking quietly through the trees. As he neared the tower, he stood in awe. The song echoed from the high window, and he could see the outline of a young woman inside, her golden hair shining in the sunlight. "Who is she?" the prince whispered to himself, his heart stirred with something he had never felt before, a deep connection to this mysterious voice. But when he looked for a way into the tower, he found none. The stone walls were high and smooth, without even the smallest crack or opening. He searched for a while, pacing around the base of the tower, but there was no way to reach her. Reluctantly, he returned to his palace, but the song had touched his soul so deeply that he could not forget it. Every day, he returned to the forest, standing behind the trees, listening for that sweet melody. He could not tear himself away. It was as if the music had enchanted him. One day, as he stood quietly behind a large oak tree, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps. The witch had arrived, her cackling voice breaking the stillness, as she stood beneath the window and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The prince's heart raced as he watched the young woman with the golden hair lower her beautiful tresses from the window. The witch climbed up, using the long silken hair as a ladder, disappearing into the tower. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first star began to twinkle in the sky, the prince returned to the tower. The prince's mind raced. If that is the ladder that she climbs, he thought, then I should try my fortune. He stood beneath the window and called out, just as the witch had done, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." In an instant, Rapunzel's golden hair fell from the window like a cascade of sunlight. The prince, his hands trembling with excitement, grasped the braid and began to climb, each step bringing him closer to the mysterious woman whose song had captivated his soul. As he climbed, he could hear Rapunzel's soft breathing, a whisper in the wind, until he reached the top. When he finally stepped over the edge of the tower, he found himself face to face with the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Rapunzel looked at him in surprise, her heart racing. She had never seen anyone other than the witch. Yet, there was something in the prince's eyes, something kind and genuine, that made her feel a sense of safety. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "I am a prince," he replied, his voice gentle, "and I have come to find you. I have heard your song and could not stay away. My heart led me here." Rapunzel's heart flooded in her chest. Could this be real? Could someone else exist beyond the tower walls? Could someone love her, a girl trapped in a lonely world? The prince smiled warmly at her, and in that moment, they both knew that something beautiful had begun. Rapunzel stood in awe, her golden hair cascading around her like a glowing halo. She had never seen anyone like him before. The prince's eyes were full of kindness and wonder, and his smile made her heart beat faster. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice trembling, unsure if this was a dream. "What do you seek here in this tower?" The prince looked at her with earnestness, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have heard your song, and it has touched my heart like nothing else. I could not stay away. I knew I had to come and meet the one who sings so beautifully, for your music calls to my soul. But I see now that I have found more than just a beautiful voice. I have found someone whose spirit shines brighter than the stars themselves." Rapunzel blushed, her cheeks turning a soft pink. "I do not belong here," Rapunzel whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. "I have been trapped in this tower for as long as I can remember. The witch, she keeps me locked away from the world, from everything. I have no hope of escaping." The prince's heart ached at her words. "You do not have to remain here forever," he said softly. "I promise you, I will find a way to bring you out of this tower. You deserve to see the world, to live freely, to be loved and cherished as you should be. I will not leave you here, Rapunzel." Rapunzel's eyes filled with tears, a mix of disbelief and hope. "But how can you help me? The witch's magic is powerful. She will never let me go." The prince placed a hand over his heart, determined. "We will find a way, together. There is always a way when love is the guide. I will not rest until you are free." She had never dared to hope that someone could care for her so deeply, that someone would fight for her freedom. The idea seemed like a dream, too wonderful to be true. "I will trust you," Rapunzel said quietly, her voice filled with both fear and hope. "But how will we escape? The witch is always watching. She never leaves me alone for long." The prince smiled warmly, his confidence unwavering. "We will have to be clever. We will wait for the right moment when the witch is distracted, and then we will make our move. But first, I must come back tomorrow. I will bring you something that might help us, a way to communicate, and perhaps even to outwit her." With that, the prince climbed down the long braid of Rapunzel's golden hair, leaving her standing at the window, her heart full of emotions she had never known. The following day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, the prince returned to the tower, as promised. This time he had a plan. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel," he called, his voice filled with urgency. "Let down your hair." The long golden braid tumbled down, and the prince climbed up once more. But this time, he was not alone. He had brought with him a small pouch filled with dried herbs and an enchanted mirror. The herbs were said to have magical properties that could help deceive the witch, and the mirror was a gift from a wise sorcerer, capable of showing glimpses of hidden truths. "I've brought you something that might help," the prince said, placing the mirror in Rapunzel's hands. "This mirror will reveal what the witch is doing when we are apart. It will help us find her weaknesses." Rapunzel's eyes widened. "How can this work?" The prince smiled, his confidence growing. "The witch may have magic, but she is not invincible. No one is. We just need to be clever, patient, and brave." Together, they spent the evening planning their escape, speaking in whispers so as not to alert the witch. As the night grew darker, Rapunzel's heart filled with a new sense of hope. For the first time, she felt that there might be a way out, that freedom, love, and a new life could be possible. But as the prince prepared to leave, he turned to her, his eyes full of concern. "Be careful, Rapunzel," he said. "The witch will sense that something is different. We must be swift. Tomorrow when I come again, we will make our move." With a final glance, the prince climbed down the hair and disappeared into the night, leaving Rapunzel to wait, her heart beating wildly in her chest. She could barely believe that her dream of escape might actually come true. Would tomorrow be the day? As the moonlight poured through the window, Rapunzel looked out into the vast forest, her thoughts swirling with both fear and hope. She had spent so many years trapped in that tower, but now, for the first time, she could see a future beyond its walls, a future filled with love, freedom, and the prince who had captured her heart. The journey was just beginning. The next day, as the sun began to set low on the horizon, Rapunzel stood by the window, eagerly awaiting the prince's arrival. Her heart raced with excitement and anxiety. She could hardly believe that tomorrow might be the day she would finally escape from this dreadful tower that had imprisoned her for so long. But at the same time, she couldn't help but wonder, would they really escape? Would the witch find out? She knew that the witch's magic was powerful, and though she was hopeful, Rapunzel feared what would happen if they were caught. The prince arrived just as the sky turned shades of purple and gold. He called out to her softly, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The prince climbs up, and as they plan to descend together, they forget to check the mirror. At that very moment, the witch arrives. She calls up to Rapunzel, "Let down your hair." Rapunzel startles at the sound of the witch's voice, her hands trembling. The prince gently takes her hand and whispers, "Stay calm. Act as if nothing has happened. I'll hide, and you let down your hair." Taking a deep breath, Rapunzel nods and releases her golden locks. As the witch climbs, she notices the unusual delay and frowns, sensing something is wrong. "Why did it take you so long to let down your hair today?" she asks, her voice dripping with malice. Rapunzel's heart races, but she remains calm. I was just thinking," she stammers, trying to hide her nervousness. "I've been waiting for you, as always." The witch studies her closely, her sharp gaze never leaving Rapunzel. Something feels different today." "What are you planning, Rapunzel?" she growls. "Do you think you can escape from me?" Rapunzel tries to act innocent, but the witch's suspicion only grows. She steps closer, eyes scanning every corner of the tower. The witch studies her, her eyes cold and calculating. "Don't lie to me, child. I know what you've been up to. No one escapes me. She can't quite place it, but a feeling of unease creeps over her. The prince, hiding in the shadows, waits for the right moment. Finally, he steps out, his voice strong and unwavering. "I won't leave you here, Rapunzel," he declares, stepping protectively in front of her. Then, turning to the witch, he adds, "She is coming with me. You have no right to keep her locked away like a prisoner." The witch's eyes narrow with fury as she realizes what is happening. Her lips curl into a wicked smile. "You fools!" she hisses. "You think you can escape me? I won't allow it." Raising her hands, she brandishes her wand and points it directly at Rapunzel. "I will curse you both," she shrieks, summoning a powerful spell. A crackling beam of dark magic shoots from her wand, aimed straight at Rapunzel. At the last second, the prince reacts. He grabs Rapunzel and pulls her aside. The magic streaks past her and strikes the mirror he had given her earlier. A blinding light flashes as the spell rebounds, hurtling back toward the witch. Her own dark magic slams into her chest, sending her staggering backward. She collapses to the ground, her strength draining away, her body weakened by the force of her own spell. Taking advantage of the moment, the prince grabs Rapunzel's long hair and quickly loops it over a sturdy tree branch that stretches close to the tower window. He tests its strength, then looks at Rapunzel. "Hold on tight," he tells her. With one last glance at the fallen witch, he helps Rapunzel climb out. She grips the hair like a rope, and together they slide down safely to the ground. Just as they land, the witch struggles to her feet, her fury burning brighter than ever. Seeing them escape, she lunges toward the window, preparing to climb down after them. But before she can, the prince swiftly draws his dagger and with a single sharp motion, cuts through Rapunzel's golden hair. The long braid falls away from the branch, leaving the witch stranded at the top of the tower. "No!" The witch screeches, her voice filled with rage and desperation. But it is too late. She is trapped. Hand in hand, Rapunzel and the prince run toward freedom, leaving the dark tower and the wicked witch behind forever. The prince and Rapunzel hurry to his horse, who had been grazing nearby, waiting faithfully. The prince helped Rapunzel onto the saddle before climbing up behind her. With a gentle nudge, the horse galloped away from the dark tower, carrying them toward freedom. After a long ride, they finally reached the prince's castle. As they entered the grand halls, the prince wasted no time in telling his parents, the king and queen, everything that had happened. They listened in astonishment, unable to believe the trials Rapunzel had endured. Moved by her story, the king and queen immediately welcomed Rapunzel as their own daughter. They admired her kindness, her bravery, and the strength she had shown despite all she had been through. Determined to reunite her with her true family, they sent messengers across the land to search for her parents. Before long, they were found, their hearts overflowing with joy to be reunited with their lost daughter. Together, they all lived in the palace, where Rapunzel was surrounded by love and happiness. In time, she and the prince were married in a grand celebration, and from that day forward, they ruled with wisdom and kindness, living happily ever after. Once upon a time, in a cozy little house nestled at the edge of a vast and enchanting forest, lived a loving mother goat and her 7 playful kids. Their home was warm and inviting, with wooden beams supporting the thatched roof, and the scent of fresh hay and wildflowers always lingering in the air. Mother Goat, like all mothers, loved her little goats very much. She protected them from all the wild animals in the forest. The mother goat was gentle, yet wise, with soft white fur and kind watchful eyes that shone with love for her little ones. The kids, full of energy and mischief, frolicked around the house, their tiny hooves clicking against the wooden floor as they played. One bright morning, the mother goat gathered her children around her before leaving for the forest to gather food. Her voice, always calm and soothing, became firm as she warned them. "Dear children, I must go to the forest. Be very careful while I am away. The wicked wolf is always lurking nearby. If he comes, do not open the door under any circumstances. He may try to trick you, but you will recognize him by his rough voice and his black paws." The little goats, despite their playful nature, were obedient and promised to be cautious. She kissed them one by one, her nose brushing against their soft fur, before stepping out into the morning light. The sun cast golden rays through the tall trees, and a cool breeze rustled the leaves as she made her way into the forest, unaware of the danger that lurked nearby. Not long after, a shadow moved between the trees. The wolf, a fearsome creature with a thick matted coat of grey fur and piercing yellow eyes, had been watching the house from a distance. His long, sharp claws dug into the earth as he prowled closer, his mind scheming how to deceive the little goats. Then, licking his lips hungrily, he knocked on the door with his heavy paw. "Open up, dear children. Your mother has returned and brought something for each of you," he called in his deep, growling voice. The little goats instantly knew it was not their mother. "No, no, you are not our mother. She has a soft, gentle voice, but yours is rough and deep. You are the wicked wolf," they cried, pressing against each other in fear. The wolf growled in frustration and stormed off to a nearby shop. There, he bought a large piece of chalk and swallowed it, hoping to soften his voice. Then he returned to the house, his stomach churning, and knocked again. "Open the door, dear children. Your mother has returned and bring gifts for each of you." This time his voice was higher and smoother, but as he rested his paw on the windowsill, the little goats saw his dark, menacing claws. "No, our mother has white feet, but yours are grey. You are the wicked wolf," they shouted. Now seething with rage, the wolf ran to the baker and snarled, "Smear my paws with dough so they become white." The baker, frightened by the glint of the wolf's sharp teeth, hesitated, but at last obeyed, with his paws covered in dough. The wolf then hurried to the miller. "Sprinkle white flour over my paws so they look just like a goat's," he ordered. The miller, trembling with fear, quickly dusted the wolf's paws until they were as pale as snow. Satisfied with his disguise, the wolf returned to the house and knocked a third time. His voice was gentle, and when the little goats peeked through the crack in the door, they saw white paws. "Open the door, dear children. Your mother has returned from the forest with gifts for you." Their doubt wavered, and believing it to be their mother, they unlatched the door. In a flash, the door burst open with a deafening crash. The wolf lunged inside, his golden eyes gleaming with triumph as his lips curled into a wicked grin. A terrible growl filled the house, sending the terrified kids scattering in all directions. One dove under the table, another crawled beneath the bed, a third squeezed into the oven, one hid in the kitchen cupboard, another crept under the wash basin, yet another climbed inside a large chest, and the smallest, trembling with fear, slipped inside the tall grandfather clock. The wolf sniffed the air, his keen nose leading him to each trembling little goat. One by one, he swallowed them whole, his stomach stretching grotesquely with each gulp. Only the smallest kid, hidden deep inside the clock, remained safe. With a belly full and a satisfied grunt, the wolf staggered out of the house and collapsed beneath an old oak tree in the meadow, where he soon fell into a deep, snoring sleep. When the mother goat returned, her heart sank at the sight of the broken door, the overturned furniture, and the eerie silence that filled the once lively home. Frantic, she called out for her children. Her voice, filled with sorrow and fear, echoed through the empty rooms. At last, A faint quivering voice answered from inside the grandfather clock. The smallest kid crawled out, his eyes filled with tears, and sobbed as he told his mother what had happened. "I was so scared, Mama," the little kid whimpered, clinging to her. "When you left, we locked the door just like you told us. But then, we heard a knock, and a voice said, 'Open up, my dear children. Your mother is back.' At first, we didn't believe it. His voice was deep and strange, not like yours at all." He sniffled and wiped his nose on her apron. But then he came back with a softer voice and showed us his white paw through the window. "It looked like yours. We thought it was really you, Mama." So we opened the door. His little hooves trembled as he continued. "It was the wolf. He rushed in and scared us. We tried to run and hide, but he was too fast. He swallowed everyone, one by one. I crawled into the clock just in time and didn't make a sound. I heard everything, Mama. And then it was so quiet." Determined to save her children, the mother goat followed the wolf's heavy snores until she found him stretched beneath the oak tree, his belly round and shifting slightly. She placed her ear close and heard faint movements within. Hope surged in her heart. With steady hands, she took a pair of sharp scissors and carefully cut open his stomach. To her immense relief, one by one, the little goats tumbled out, shaken but unharmed. They clung to their mother, their eyes wide with astonishment and joy. The mother goat, her heart burning with righteous anger, gathered heavy stones and filled the wolf's belly with them before sewing him back up. As the sun began to set, the wolf stirred, groaning. He felt an unbearable thirst and heaved himself to his feet, the weight in his belly making him sluggish. He staggered toward the river, lapping up water greedily. But as he leaned over the edge, the heavy stones pulled him forward. With a loud splash, he plunged into the deep water, never to be seen again. The little goats cheered, their voices ringing like bells in the twilight air. Their mother gathered them into a warm embrace, pressing them close, grateful that they were safe once more. From that day on, they never forgot the importance of caution and the wisdom of their mother's words. And so, in their cozy little house at the forest's edge, the mother goat and her 7 kids lived happily and safely ever after.
Once upon a time, there was a woodworker. One day, he decided to make new legs for his broken chair. He chose a nice log and, without hesitation, and grabbed his sharp axe. "Oh dear, will it hurt?" squealed the piece of wood. The woodworker was so frightened that he quickly wanted to get rid of the strange log. He gave it as a gift to his friend Geppetto, who was a shoemaker. Geppetto gladly accepted the gift. He went back to his small workshop and sat down with his chisel. "I will carve a little man," he said to himself. "I will call him Pinocchio. I hope this name brings him lots of luck." First, he carved the hair, then the forehead and the little eyes, which blinked and stared back at him. Has the wood come to life? Wondered the shoemaker, and he began carving the nose. And immediately the nose started growing. No matter what Geppetto did to shorten it, the cheeky nose kept getting longer. Soon, the mouth was ready too. It even smiled and stuck out its tongue. Finally, Geppetto carved the arms and legs. Then the little man kicked him so hard that it knocked his wig off. "Ah, you're not even finished, and already you show disrespect to your father," he scolded him, placing him on the floor to teach him how to walk. As soon as Pinocchio stood on his feet, he ran across the room, opened the door, and dashed outside. "Try to catch him." Poor Geppetto ran after him. "Catch him!" he shouted, but no one helped him. Passers-by stopped in surprise and wondered where this little wooden boy had come from. Fortunately, a policeman appeared from around the corner, grabbed Pinocchio by the nose, and handed him over to Geppetto. The shoemaker could hardly wait to pull the ears of the naughty one, but imagine how surprised he was when he realized he had forgotten to carve them. But Pinocchio got scared of the policeman and immediately asked his father for forgiveness. Of course, kind Geppetto was touched and forgave him. When they returned home, he made him a little suit from paper, shoes from bark, and a hat from bread. The little boy was very pleased and kissed the craftsman from the bottom of his heart. "Father Geppetto, I want to thank you for everything you've done for me." It said, "I will go to school to become a smart child and help you when you get old." "Oh, Pinocchio," sighed Geppetto. "We don't have money for textbooks." Then the little man sadly lowered his head. The shoemaker couldn't stand it and said to himself, "Whatever happens, happens." He put on his old velvet jacket and left the house. He returned without the jacket, but with a primer under his arm. "Where is your jacket, father?" Pinocchio asked. "I sold it. I was too hot with it anyway." Pinocchio understood what had happened, threw himself into his father's arms, and kissed him. The next day, he took the primer and went to school. On his way, he thought, "Today I will learn to read, tomorrow to write, and the day after to count. When I become smart, I will earn a lot of money and buy my father a brand new jacket." Suddenly, he heard a merry noise from somewhere. He looked around and immediately forgot about school. He ran to see what was happening and found himself in a square. In the middle of it stood a colorful round tent. "What is this?" Pinocchio wondered, and a little boy answered him. "Can't you read? This is a puppet theater." "And how much is the ticket?" asked Pinocchio. 4 pennies. "I am selling a primer for 4 pennies," Pinocchio shouted. Poor Geppetto. All his sacrifices, selling his velvet jacket, were in vain. Instead of going to school, Pinocchio sold the primer to buy a ticket for the theater. As soon as he entered the tent, the puppets immediately noticed him. "Pinocchio! Long live our brother Pinocchio!" they shouted from the stage. "Come up to us, Pinocchio!" called Harlequin. The guest jumped onto the stage and was embraced by his wooden relatives. But at that very moment, the theater director appeared, the terrifying Fire Eater. He whipped his long lash, and the poor puppets trembled in fear. Seeing Pinocchio with his bloodshot eyes, the Fire Eater hissed, "Hey you, get off the stage!" And then he added, "Tonight I'll deal with you!" After the performance, the director decided to cook lamb for dinner, but the firewood wasn't enough to start a fire. Then he remembered the wooden boy and shouted, "Pinocchio, come here so I can throw you in the hearth." "Spare me, master!" the boy cried. "I don't want to die! Oh, where are you, Father Geppetto? Where are you to save me?" "You have a father?" the director wondered, and his heart seemed to soften. "If that's the case, he will surely be very sad if you die. Perhaps I should burn Harlequin instead." Then Pinocchio knelt at his feet and shed heartfelt tears. "Have mercy on his life, master! Do not burn Harlequin! Better throw me in the fire!" "Look at him," the villain grinned. "This Pinocchio is a fine boy. Well, never mind. Today I'll eat undercooked lamb." And he asked the guest to tell him his story. After listening to the entire tale of the wooden boy, the Fire Eater thought for a moment. He felt a pang for the shoemaker Geppetto and handed the boy 5 golden coins. "Take them to your father and tell him to buy a new coat," he said. Pinocchio thanked him, hugged all the puppets one by one, and headed home. But on the way, he met the blind cat and the lame fox. They asked him where he was coming from, and Pinocchio shared his adventures. When they heard about the coins, the 2 tricksters concocted a devious plan. "If you really want to make your father happy, you'll need many more of these coins," they said. "But you know, there's a magical place where if you bury 5 gold coins, the next day you'll find 100 times 5. "How is that possible?" Pinocchio asked, astonished. "Very simple," replied the fox. "Have you heard of the Land of Fools? There lies the Field of Wonders. In it grows the great oak. If, at midnight, you dig a hole under the oak's crown and plant at least 5 coins, by morning a tree will grow, and instead of leaves, golden coins will hang from it?" "Wonderful!" Pinocchio exclaimed, and filled with joy spun on one foot. Then he went with his new friends to the inn, called the Red Crab. They sat down to dine and discuss what to do. The fox and the cat ate their fill, but Pinocchio was so excited that he didn't even try the food. At midnight, the innkeeper woke him up and made him pay the bill. The cat and the fox, for some reason, had already left. The wooden boy parted with one of his 5 coins and set off alone toward the Field of Wonders. Suddenly, 2 figures emerged from the darkness, wearing black sacks over their heads. "Your money or your life!" they shouted. Of course, it was the cat and the fox. Pinocchio had nowhere else to hide the coins, so he stuffed them into his mouth. And since he dared not open it, he couldn't say a word. He remained silent even when the bandits tied a rope around his neck and tightened the noose. "Save me, father," he kept repeating to himself in his mind. The cat and the fox hung him from the great oak and said, "You'll hang here until you open your mouth. But know this, you don't have much time to think. Fortunately, the blue fairy lived nearby. As it grew light, she saw through her window the poor wooden boy, clapped her hands, and her servants, the falcon and the poodle, appeared before her. The fairy first turned to the falcon. "Fly to the great oak," she commanded, "and tear the rope with your beak." Then she turned to the poodle. "And you, take the carriage and bring the boy to me." Soon, the half-dead Pinocchio found himself in a warm and soft bed. The fairy summoned 3 famous doctors, the raven, the owl, and the cricket, who prescribed a very bitter medicine for the boy. As soon as he drank it, Pinocchio immediately recovered. "Tell me how you ended up in the hands of those bandits," said the blue fairy, gently stroking his head. And Pinocchio told her almost everything. Well, he conveniently left out the part about the premier. And when the fairy asked him where his gold coins were, he answered that he had lost them, even though they were actually in his pocket. Suddenly, she started laughing. While they were talking, the wooden boy's nose, which was already quite long, grew by 2 more inches. "Oh, you," said the blue fairy, "why are you lying to me? Can't you see that your own nose is giving you away?" Poor Pinocchio didn't know where to hide from the shame. Then she clapped her hands and called upon a flock of woodpeckers, who pecked at his nose and shortened it. "You must always tell the truth," the fairy advised him, "because when you lie, your nose grows longer. Now go home and give the money to your father." Pinocchio thanked her, hugged her, and rushed to the workshop of his father, Geppetto. But as he passed by the great oak, he once again met... guess who? Yes, the cat and the fox. This time, the naive boy believed the cheats and buried his coins in the field of wonders. The next day, he went to see what had grown, but there was nothing. Even the coins had disappeared. So, Pinocchio went back home with empty hands. Geppetto scolded him for being gone so long, but in the end, he forgave him and sent him to school. One might think that after all the adventures Pinocchio had been through, he would have become wiser. But that very same day, he made friends with a lazy boy named Carlo. "Let's go to the land of fun," Carlo suggested. "There are no schools or primers there, and the children play all day long." "Is there really such a wonderful place in the world?" Pinocchio wondered. "I'm leaving tonight in a carriage," Carlo replied. "Do you want to come with me?" Of course. Pinocchio immediately forgot all about his father Geppetto. It turned out that Carlo wasn't lying. At midnight, a wonderful carriage appeared out of nowhere. It was pulled by 24 little donkeys, all wearing white boots. A grumpy coachman sat on the driver's seat, cracking a long, long whip. The carriage was full of boys who couldn't wait to reach the land of fun. There was no room left for Pinocchio, so he rode one of the donkeys. And the land of fun was exactly as Carlo had described. All the streets were filled with merrymaking, the boys played all day long, and the word school was forbidden. They weren't even allowed to whisper it. "How wonderful life is," Pinocchio kept saying every time he met his friend. "Just think, my teacher forbade me from being friends with you." But one morning, the wooden boy woke up and saw that instead of his little ears, which Geppetto had never finished carving, there were long, furry ears. What's more, the next day they were even longer and hairier. Pinocchio despaired. He put on his little cap and set off to find little Carlo. When they saw each other, the boys burst into laughter. Both of them had long ears. They laughed until they almost passed out. At one point, Carlo went silent, turned pale, and started swaying. "Help me!" he cried. "I can't stand on my feet." "I can't either," Pinocchio exclaimed, and he too began to wobble. In that moment, their faces turned into gray muzzles, and their bodies were covered with fur. They grew hooves and funny little tails. The boys were terrified and began to cry. But instead of their bright voices, a horrible donkey bray echoed. The grumpy coachman heard them and hurried over to see what was going on. "How wonderful," he said happily, rubbing his hands. "2 more wonderful little donkeys. Tomorrow I'll sell them for 4 gold coins." Carlo ended up in a rural stable while Pinocchio was taken to the circus. There they taught him to perform various funny tricks. Oh, those were hard times. Every day the trainer whipped him and fed him only straw. Once he was made to jump through a hoop, but unfortunately Pinocchio tripped and hurt his back leg. Then the circus owner called for the stableman. "I don't need a lame donkey," he said. "Take him to the market tomorrow and sell him." "But who would want to buy a lame donkey?" "I will," said a man, handing a few pennies to the stableman. "I need a donkey's skin for a drum." When Pinocchio heard what fate awaited him, he cried out sadly. But there was no one to save him. The buyer took him to the shore, tied his hoof with a string, hung a stone around his neck, and pushed him into the water. Then he sat down and waited for the little donkey to drown so he could pull it out, skin it, and make a drum from its hide. Weighed down by the heavy stone, Pinocchio sank all the way to the sea floor. There, he suddenly remembered all the sorrows he had caused his father Geppetto, and he became very sad. He decided to call for the help of the Blue Fairy. She heard him immediately and sent some kind fish to the sea, who ate the donkey meat, but left the wooden body of the boy untouched. And when the buyer pulled the string out of the water, instead of a dead donkey, there hung Pinocchio. The poor man was so scared that he started stuttering. Where did the donkey go, the one I just pushed into the water? He wondered. I am that donkey, Pinocchio answered, laughing uncontrollably. You? The man shouted angrily. You swindler! Don't be mad. Untie the string and I'll explain everything, Pinocchio pleaded. But the man was furious. Finally, the man agreed to listen to him, and the boy told him everything from beginning to end. When he finished his story, the buyer shouted, Do you think I'm crazy? I don't believe a word you say. I paid money for you, and now I want it back. I'll take you back to the market and sell you for firewood. At that, Pinocchio stuck his tongue out, dove into the sea, and swam far away. Out of the waves, a massive blue whale suddenly leapt, chasing the wooden boy through the water with a powerful surge, its mouth wide open. Pinocchio got scared and desperately splashed with his hands and feet. He swam faster and faster, but the monster caught up to him, opened its giant mouth, and swallowed him whole. The poor boy slid into the whale's stomach so fast that he felt nauseous. When he finally stopped, everything around him was pitch black. Help! Help me! Pinocchio cried, crawling on all fours. Suddenly, a distant light flickered. Soon the flame of a thin candle was visible. A little more, and... No, it couldn't be. Father Geppetto, is that you? Pinocchio, my son! Crying with joy, they hugged each other and started telling their adventures. I searched for you on land day and night and couldn't find you, Father Geppetto began. Then I made a boat to continue searching for you at sea. But a terrible storm broke out. The waves capsized the boat, and I was swallowed by a massive whale. Luckily, that same day, it had eaten the remains of a sunken ship. In its hold, there was plenty of food, and that's how I didn't die from hunger. I'm so happy to see you again, Father Geppetto, said Pinocchio. Now we must escape from here as soon as possible. They held hands and started climbing towards the throat. Luckily, the monster was sleeping with its mouth open, as it had asthma. So, Pinocchio managed to crawl out and swam with all his might, while Father Geppetto sat on his back. When they reached the shore, the old man shivered from the cold. Lean on my hand, Father, said Pinocchio, and led him along the deserted shore. Soon they saw an abandoned hut and went inside to warm up. The boy noticed that the shoemaker had a fever, and he prepared a comfortable bed of straw for him. I'll go find some milk to feed you, he said. It turned out that this was not an easy task. Pinocchio had to walk alone for several fields before reaching a village. There, he heard the mooing of cows and asked the farmer for some milk. I'll give it to you. Why wouldn't I? Replied the farmer. But how will you pay me back? My donkey died yesterday, and I don't have money to buy a new one. If you're willing to do its work, I'll give you milk and bread every morning. Pinocchio agreed, and for several days, he worked from dawn to dusk, carrying food to his sick father, Geppetto. Then he started making baskets. From time to time, he went to the market to sell them and spent his money wisely. In the evening, he would study to read and write. One day, Pinocchio overheard that the Blue Fairy was seriously ill. Without thinking twice, he sent her all the money he had saved up until then. That evening, he dreamt that she came to reward him for his kind heart. And the next day, he looked in the mirror and couldn't believe his eyes. There, in the reflection, was a beautiful boy made of flesh and blood. Father Geppetto was deeply moved and hugged him tightly. And where was the previous Pinocchio? There he is, said the old shoemaker, pointing to the wooden puppet sitting on the chair. How wonderful it is that I'm now a real boy, said the living Pinocchio, and out of joy he spun around on one foot.